Hi BookTube. Today I'm going to review my long-awaited review of Empire of Lies by Raymond Khoury. If there is an alternate title out there called The Ottoman Secret, but it is the same book. So if you find a book out there called The Ottoman Secret by Raymond Khoury, it's the same book. Now, but I have the one titled Empire of Lies. So I'm going to try to explain the setting, the plot, and my general thoughts on this book. Let's start from the setting. The setting of the book is an alternate 2017 of what if in 1683 the Ottoman Empire won at the Battle of Vienna and conquered the rest of Europe, excluding Russia and the UK. I don't know what became of Iceland. Russia remains Tsarist, Russian Empire. The UK becomes, I think, a kind of Britain becomes like a client state or a puppet state to Ottoman Europe. And the United States becomes the Christian Republic. As a reaction to the Ottomans, the Muslims conquering all of Europe, there is a Christian pushback in America, where it's exclusively white and exclusively Christian. So there were a whole lot of Christian refugees that went to North America as a reaction to the Ottomans conquering all of Europe. Ottoman society in 2017 is, think basically Saudi Arabia. Public beheadings, women have to cover up, no basic rights, etc., etc. However, there were periods of tolerance and intolerance throughout the empire's history. Now, that's basically it. I don't want to get too far down the rabbit hole. By the way, the rest of the map of the political world is not addressed. So I don't know what's happening in China, South America, the rest of Sub-Saharan Africa, Southeast Asia, Australia, South America. Yeah, I think I mentioned that. I only can tell you some parts of the world of what's the political developments as a consequence to an Ottoman Europe. So that's the setting. I would hesitate to call this society a dystopia because in this world, the Holocaust never happened, Mao's Great Leap Forward never happened, and the Holodomor never happened. So I would hesitate. This is like a trade-off with less personal freedoms, but less wars and less genocides. So that's the setting, but the plot itself and how this world came to be is arguably more interesting. But by the way, Raymond Khoury did a lot of research for this book. I've gotten into a lot of details in this book. I have never read so much about the battle for Vienna in 1683 than I have I haven't read about so much of that any time before than until now. The horrors and the brutality of that war, of the Battle of Vienna, it was really vivid details. So now the plot. So the plot is a man from our timeline, Rashid, does time travel and introduces how to make modern weapons to the Sultan in 1682, which helps him conquer Vienna, particularly how to make dynamite. So there's a suicide bombing that wipes out all the leaders of the armies of Europe, which then leads on to the Ottomans conquering Vienna and the rest of Europe. So Rashid is a man from our timeline who travels to 1682 and gives the Ottomans instructions, gives the Sultan instructions on how to build modern weapons. And that's what helps him conquer Vienna and the rest of Europe. Now, after they conquer Vienna, can they hold it? That is a question that's very difficult to answer. How far into Europe can the Ottomans really go? Raymond Khoury has an answer to that. So Rashid stays in I'm thinking, what century is the 1600s? Oh, okay, 17th century. He stays in 17th century. Stays in the 17th century, and leads the government leads the armies into conquering the rest of Europe with his knowledge of modern day weapons. So the book reminds me a lot about Guns of the South by Harry Turtledove. So yeah, there is that. Now, the time travel. Now then, he travels forward in time to 2017 Paris, which is now Ottoman Paris, where he seeks medical attention because he has a heart condition. And in modern day Ottoman Paris, which is basically Saudi Arabia in France, 3 people discover his secret. An anesthesiologist at the hospital named Ramazan, his wife Nisreen, who is a human rights activist who is constantly at odds with the Ottoman regime, and Ramazan's brother Kamal, who is an anti-terrorism agent. They discover this secret, and this leads them to travel back through time to change history, to course correct and make it so that the Europeans, so that our timeline is in place. Ramazan and Kamal are actually more conformist to the Ottoman regime. Nisreen is a human rights activist, so she wants to set society right by traveling back in time and stopping Rashid from doing this dastardly plan. So that is basically the story that I can give you without getting into too many spoilers. Now, here's some general thoughts. I want to address the time travel aspect to this book. Raymond Khoury tries, but doesn't do very well, but tries to set up some rules for how the time travel is. So, Rashid found in the ancient city of Palmyra an incantation, a magic spell. And I actually prefer this over producing some kind of pseudoscience. Khoury just resorts to magic. And I'd prefer that. I mean, I don't want to get into pseudoscience. So Rashid finds an ancient incantation which allows you to travel through time, which allows you to jump through time and space, where you utter a spell and then you say the time and place you want to be. So that's basically it. Now, in the time travel, there are 2 rules. 2 rules. 1, you cannot travel back to a time where you already exist, because there cannot be 2 yous at once. And the second one is you can't bring anything with you. Because if you can bring clothes with you, bring anything with you, it opens up a whole can of questions. Like, what if you bring modern day weapons to the past? You cannot just bring all kinds of tools with you to the past. That opens up a really, really large rabbit hole. So the rule is you jump through time, but every time you make the jump, you show up in your new time and place naked, completely naked. So what Rashid did was he covered his entire body with tattoos, with instructions on how to build modern day weapons, particularly dynamite. So he shows up in 2017 Paris, naked and covered in weird tattoos. So he's like a human notebook. And Raymond Khoury even addressed this in some interviews. Like, he was reluctant. He was asking, does the ink count? Ink embedded in your skin as, I don't know, organic, as part of you. He even addressed this. He was asking, if you can't bring clothes with you, can you bring the tattoo ink with you? Ultimately, the answer is yes. Anyway, so that's how he did it, how he traveled back in time and changed history, how Rashid did it. Of course, Kamal, Nizreen, and Ramazan want to change that. But the thing is, when it comes to time travel, there are just too many time paradoxes you just cannot address. What if you jump back in time to a time you were born, and you live long enough to see yourself born? What then? Or is it one timeline or multiple timelines? Like, if you change a timeline, are you creating an alternate timeline? Or are you just changing one timeline as you're jumping around? And the characters in the book actually ask that question. Would people, if you jump back in time and do something there, if you change the course of history when you do time travel, would the people from the future cease to exist? They ask that question, and frankly, they do give that a lot of thought. I don't know, but or can you write notes to your future self or to your future loved ones? Write notes from the past for them, like giving them warnings. But is that the same loved one, or is that an alternate them? There are just too many rabbit holes to go down when it comes to time travel. That's why I didn't appreciate the time travel aspect. Nevertheless, Raymond Khoury plays the time travel trope reasonably well. So I would rate this book a 9 out of 10. A 9 out of 10. Now, the ending was epic. The villain speech that Rashid made near the end gave me a lot to think about. The book addresses the political and philosophical question of the trade-off between democracy and stability. What do you call it? You have to read this book because Raymond Khoury describes it much better than I could. I'm just trying to make an abridged description of it. But the villain's speech was epic, and the ending was very, very satisfying. So, despite the time travel trope, I thought he did it reasonably well. And it makes for interesting situations if you go through time and space and you jump to a time and show up completely naked. There were some very awkward situations where the time travelers have to quickly grab the nearest clothes, or quickly explain why they're naked. Anyway, 9 out of 10. This was quite a long book, I must say. This is probably my second favorite alternate history novel that I've read after Fatherland. So make of that what you will. Anyway, 9 out of 10. Thank you for listening. Read Empire of Lies by Raymond Khoury. You won't regret it. And if any of you have read it, I hope we can have like a discussion in the comments or a future live stream, because because I want to talk about this book more in depth with some of you, for anyone who has read it. Okay,